Welcome to FYI TV, people. We've got our guest here, Mason Wyatt with City Soundproofing, to tell us all about what you can do to protect from sound. Now, Mason, you live in New York, right?
That's correct, Manhattan.
Manhattan. We're in Richmond, Virginia, in the studio right now, and I heard they have a little bit of a noise problem up there.
New York's probably one of the noisiest cities around, although most urban areas have similar issues: traffic, neighbors, elevators, rooftop air conditioning units, and a variety of other problems that are just common throughout urban developments. But New York is where I focus most of my business.
Well, I'm only kidding. I've been to New York, and it is noisy. And not only that, you've got screaming from the streets. You've got people bouncing around with their massive boom boxes. I mean, it's you get used to it, I'm sure, living there. But I know when I go to New York, it's almost enough to make me kind of jittery.
Well, you know, the street noise, really, most people that live in the city, they expect a certain amount of street noise.
Right.
What they seem to be complaining about and have concerns over, for the most part, is their neighbors.
And so it's the other side of the wall.
It's the neighbors next door, the neighbors upstairs, you know, the kids stomping around, the guy that comes home late at night, and he's got, you know, he wants to turn on his stereo and make his dinner at 3 o'clock in the morning because he just got off work.
He might have gone to work, right? He might not be out partying.
It's the city that never sleeps.
Yeah.
So that kind of comes with the territory too.
Now let me ask you this: what kind of? Do you live in a house? Do you live in an apartment?
No, I live in an apartment building.
As most people probably do in New York.
Yeah, absolutely. The very, very few people have single-family dwellings, and really, they're only really out in the boroughs, in the outer boroughs in Staten Island.
Right.
Outer parts of Queens, or
maybe the northern Bronx or something like that.
Yeah, the northern Bronx and stuff. But you know, it's the city. I mean,
so Manhattan. We're talking to Manhattan right now, and most of our viewers are probably watching this on cable. It gets piped into their building, right?
Right.
You don't have a choice over what cable provider you have, or whether you have DirecTV or whatever.
Yeah, no, most buildings. Although there are a lot of dishes around, particularly in the boroughs, but most of the buildings have sort of sealed a deal with one company or another.
Right.
So most buildings have Time Warner cable, and that's where they get their internet access and everything else. And they just don't want to have the complications.
Wow.
Much different than residential suburban neighborhoods.
Well, folks, if you've just tuned in, we're sitting here with Mason Wyatt, who is a soundproofing specialist, probably one of the best in New York. And that doesn't come from him, that comes from me. And if you've got problems with sound in your apartment, or I mean, if you live in a house, but most people in New York are living in apartments, if you've got problems with the sound level in your apartment, this is the guy you need to call. Now, there's obviously a problem in Manhattan. There's too much noise. How do you fix it, Mr. Wyatt?
Noise is delivered in several ways. One is ambient noise, which is airborne noise. And one is structure-borne noise, which is noise that will actually get into the fabric of the building, like the studs and the concrete and all that stuff.
Like if you've got a train going right above your head, that kind of noise.
Well, yeah, I mean, that becomes structure-borne. Now, the result of that in your apartment is probably both ambient and structure-borne.
Right. It shakes and it's noisy.
Right. So you know, and then there's really vibrations in general. So sometimes we have calls from people that are living, their apartments are over or near an elevator, or an equipment room, or a pump room, or an elevator mechanical room, those kind of things that have pumps and motors and things that vibrate and make noise.
Well, I'm sure some of our viewers here can relate to exactly what you're saying. If you've got an elevator shaft going right up next to your bedroom...
Yes,
I guess,
that's frequently the case.
And so there's two options you've got here. You either get used to it, right?
Right.
Or you call Mason Wyatt with City Soundproofing.
That's correct. And we do have options for that. And
now, what can you do? I know from my experience in New York and also Washington, D.C., in the apartment buildings, is that there seems like there's a lot of noise in the hallway. People are coming and people are coming in from going out. They've got their friends over. Seems like once they get behind their door, it's not so bad. But there is always that problem with you know, highs and lows of sound in the hallway.
Well, hallways in New York, for the vast majority of them, because of maintenance, they have very reflective surfaces. So they have tile on the floor.
Good point.
You know, just drywall on the walls, drywall ceiling, or concrete, or you know, something that's very reflective, which makes an echo chamber out of the hallway. So any noise, even if it's way down the hallway, just bounces around through there, and every time it bounces, it adds to the volume in the room. So this.
So if it's noisy to begin with, it's just getting even noisier.
It gets even noisier. Now, what happens with that noise when it comes to the resident is that it comes through the entry door. Now, in most cases, an entry door will have a space around the edge of the door where the jamb is, and across the bottom, where, you know, to allow for the operation of the door. Very normal and very typical.
We have to have somewhat of a gap.
You do have to have somewhat of a gap.
Yeah.
However, the noise control industry has developed treatments for that and equipment that can be put into place. Now, it's somewhat similar to weather stripping, but it's much more sophisticated, and it fits onto the door jamb and the door so in such a way that you can really seal that air. So you get the air sealed off, and then the noise stops coming in.
Well, because sound travels through air. If I remember from science at school, it's air.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite little things to say is where air goes, noise goes.
That's right.
And if you have 1% of a barrier that's leaking, you double the noise that's coming in. So if you take that space that you say it's maybe it's a 1/16 of an inch all the way around, then doors are about 17 square feet around.
Right.
So that's a square inch. And then the space at the bottom typically will be a 1/2 inch. So you've got another...
You've been thinking about this.
Oh, I think about it every day. You kidding me? So then you end up with a space that's about like this. Like about
so, okay,
two...
But I think let me translate to the audience. I think what Mr. White's saying is if you take the gap and add it all up at the round and at the bottom, you end up with a...
You end up with a hole in your door.
A big
it's
hole.
like, hello. So, you know, the noise comes in. Well, you squeeze that off, shut it off, and now the noise doesn't come through because the air is no longer passing through, so the noise doesn't come with it. And it really works well. And silence is not an option.
Right.
You can only reduce noise in most...
It's New York City.
In the vast majority of cases, a substantial reduction of noise, and achieving that makes people much happier with their lives. And that's a two-way street. Because not only do you have issues from noise in the hallway, but you have issues from the interior of your apartment. Let's just say you've got a yappy dog. And every time somebody goes by your door, the dog naturally, just because it's, you know, instinctively, is going to go bark at the door. That's where the noise is coming from.
So the point you're making is you could stop it going out and coming in.
Yeah.
That's a nice courtesy to your neighbors.
Absolutely. And I'll get a lot of calls because people have those dogs and their neighbors are complaining. Every time I pass your door, the dogs are out there, yep.
When you've got somebody that's living in an apartment building and they've got a problem with noise and they call the super and they say, hey, you know, I pay rent at this place and I want this fixed. Do they fix it?
No. No, they do. No,
well, that's a good answer.
No, well, the buildings don't want to spend a dime on anything.
Right.
They don't want to hear about it.
So it becomes the responsibility of the apartment leasee, renter.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can, as a tenant or an owner of an apartment in a condominium or whatever, you can complain, and sometimes you can get someone to issue a letter to say, you're making too much noise, your dogs bark, blah, blah, blah. But what are you going to do?
You see it on People's Court all the time. You can end up in a fight and in front of Judge Judy or whatever.
You know, most of the time, people don't even have a dialogue with their neighbors. They could live next door to somebody for 10 years and never know their name.
Right.
You know, you want to be lonely, move to New York.
So the take-home message is to those people who are complaining about the noise next door, be proactive, pick up the phone and call City Soundproofing because that's the way to fix it.
But we can fix, the vast majority of doors can be really silenced in terms of transfer of noise through the door. And that's, like I said, it's a two-way street. And some people are concerned about their privacy.
Yeah.
You know, it may be that they're in a studio apartment. So everything in their apartment is, you know, right there at the front door, so to speak.
So the next door neighbor says, "Oh, so I heard
well,
you not
right.
what, you know."
Yeah, I heard you got lucky last night. So nobody, you know, people have those concerns.
Or I heard something more serious. It could be some confidential business matter that you're talking about. Well, it could.
And, you know, of course, we don't only do residential. We do commercial as well. So any office applications have similar problems, and we have similar fixes. So privacy issues become more of a focus for like lawyers or financial consultants or doctors or psychiatrists.
Yes.
You know, in particular.
There's actually a client attorney privilege issue there.
Yeah. Now I get a fair amount of calls from psychotherapists because they encourage their patients to make noise and fuss and yell and get that off their chest. So they particularly have issues with their privacy and being, you know, everybody's sitting in their lobby waiting for their turn and somebody's in there yelling about their grandma.
So folks, if you live next to a psychoanalyst, psychiatrist, psychologist, and you're hearing all this screaming and shouting, I recommend you telling that psychiatrist, psychologist, therapist about city soundproofing.
We can fix it. And at least for the vast majority of times, there's a lot of issues that we have just developed systems that work.
Well,
and,
let me take this opportunity. Folks at home, we're listening to Mason Wyatt. He's an expert on soundproofing, and if you don't believe him, let's listen to one of his customers talk about their experience. So City Soundproofing has got tons of happy customers. We're going to talk to more customers later. Now, with regards to the door, what kind of money are we talking about?
Well, we're running a special at $4.99.
$4.99, and that's to take the door off, get that hole sealed up.
There's so much variety in the source of the noise, the type of the noise, and the sensitivity of the receiver. And there's a variety of what may be composing the barrier itself. So all the walls are different. Doors are different. What we treat is that space around the door where the air is passing through.
Right.
And in most cases, that is the weakest point in the barrier. So part of my advice to most people is fix the obvious things, reevaluate, and then add additional treatments if they're needed. Because we like to achieve the goals of the customer without spending all of their money.
Well, without, having a volume meter or whatever, just give me a ballpark on the reduction in sound from the door treatment that you do.
I generally say half of the noise.
Wow.
Yes.
Half the noise.
Half the noise. Now, that's generally about a 10 decibel difference.
Okay.
Some doors we get 15, 18. Some doors we don't get but 8.
And that's for $4.99, people. So for $499, you can make not just your life better because that's the noise coming in, but your neighbor's life better because that's the noise going out.
Yeah.
Plus, you've got a feeling of security. People aren't listening to what you're saying. People can't hear your dog. They can't. Now, I'm assuming that it would actually help with smells. Maybe you wouldn't smell the curry wafting down the hallway.
Anything that's
whatever
coming
it
in,
is.
Anything that's airborne is going to be, stopped for the vast majority. And, smells, certainly. A lot of people, you go in hallways in New York all the time and you smell dinner in every apartment you pass cooking something different. But you can keep that in your apartment, and you also, can have, if you do this, it won't be in the hallway either.
Right, so you're really separating yourself from the common area.
Yeah, a lot of times you can smell what the neighbor's making for dinner.
Yeah.
So the same way as you can hear what the neighbor's got to say when he walks down the hallway. So the same thing applies.
So if you're planning on having a fight with your wife or significant other, my advice is to go to City Soundproofing first. Yeah. Delay the fight. Just go, yes, honey, yes, honey. Once Mason comes in, fixes the door, boy, you can light up, right?
Yeah, well, I don't. Your personal life's all up to you.
Now, okay, so this is fascinating. So for $499. You can make a 50% reduction, approximately 50% reduction in the noise coming in from the hallway.
Yeah.
That's one problem. Now, you'd mentioned earlier, for instance, if you have an elevator shaft going up, is that fixable?
Well, elevator shafts are challenging because the vast majority of that is transferred structurally. Now, structure-borne noise gets into the fabric of the building, like I'd said before. So if you have concrete and steel joists and the elevator shaft is always some sort of masonry because it's a serious fire-rated enclosure.
Right.
So, and all of the workings and mechanical parts of the elevator are attached to that wall. So if you happen to be on an apartment next to that shaft, then you're going to hear noise from the mechanical process of the elevator going up and down, including the doors opening and closing. Because that impact of whatever, if they run over where a runner changes from one runner to another, it's clickety-clack, like the trains.
Right.
So you've got that going on. It gets structure-borne. It passes through the structure, and then it redevelops and regenerates into your interior
almost like
space.
a record, almost like the needle of a record.
If it's connected, it'll transfer, and it has that effect.
How would you go around fixing a problem like that?
Well, we take that wall, whatever your exposure is to the elevator shaft,
right,
and we put another wall next to that all the way around it that doesn't touch that elevator shaft. So now you've isolated that wall. You have more barrier, and you've disconnected that structure-borne signal. So
wow. This is amazing. I never thought that that you could fix something like that. And I never thought there was so much to it. But people at home, if you've got problems with sound at your apartment or your condo, this is the guy to call, Mason Wyatt with City Soundproofing. And right now we're going to hear from another customer who has got, hopefully, good things to say about you.
Well, let's hope so.
That was an unsolicited customer of City Soundproofing telling you the God's honest truth. So we're back here with Mason Wyatt. Mason, we've talked about the door. You've got a $4.99 special. I think that's a great deal. We've talked about the wall. I can't imagine that comes that cheap, but hey, it's a solution. What about, sometimes when you can hear steps above, it sounds like they're walking with, wooden shoes and you can hear scuffling. And what about the ceiling? Can you fix that?
Yeah, we have treatments that we've developed for seating footfall, impact noise, moving furniture, and ambient noise passes through as well. So a lot of people will call and they complain, not only do I hear everybody walking around and moving their furniture, but I can hear their television and their conversations when their cell phone rings and things like that. So there's a variety of options that can be put in place.
Now, what you're saying, folks, is some of your neighbors may know you a little bit better than you think, which is not cool, right? But, you're all living on top of each other up there in New York.
Well, that's the way they do. They stack them up.
Pick up the phone, go online, and fix the problem. How many of you have been complaining for years and years and years about the noise? Well, we got a solution for you, Manhattan. City Soundproofing. Now, look, I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. Is it the same issue with the ceiling where you want to isolate it? Is that what you're going to do?
Isolation is key. And that is also key in the vast majority of anything that's going to reduce noise between a source and a receiver. So you've got your major members that create your ceiling, and it's also creates the floor from above.
Right.
So that above you have subfloor and finished floor.
Right.
And then you've got joist, and then you've got your drywall or your plaster on the bottom of your joist.
Right.
The footfall and the ambient noise will pass through those first two layers of wood, and that comes into that box or chamber that's being created by the joist.
Right.
So that's an empty hole. And then you've got that finished surface on the bottom. Now, that combination of things is a drum. So when your foot hits the floor, it's like hitting a drum.
This guy's been thinking about this stuff. I never thought about any of this stuff. You've really made it your business to figure this stuff out.
Well, I've been working at it for a while, and I really got involved in it when I went from being a Class A contractor to building studios, which I did.
Now, when you say studios, you're talking about
recording studios.
I see.
And now I started building recording studios in the mid-'80s.
Right.
And that's when I learned a lot of the things, how to solve a lot of the problems. Because studios have very critical listening environments, and you have to have good separation. So all of the elements that I apply today have some relationship to that early experience.
Well, we were talking off camera earlier, and you actually flew some people in from California who specialized in audio studios.
Yes, studio design and construction.
So, folks, since 1983, this gentleman sitting next to me, Mason Wyatt with City Soundproofing, has been specializing in audio isolation. And so you come from the background of building recording studios.
Well, I do. I started in the construction industry when I was 15. So I know how things are built, and that's really helped me a lot because I've built everything from dog houses to high rises.
Right.
So I know how things are built. I can walk into most any room anywhere and tell you what's underneath, like I've got x-ray eyes.
Right.
Now what we do is we take your ceiling completely down, so we have exposed now the joist and the subfloor above. So we go right to that first layer under the subfloor, and being cautious of specially special lengthened screws, we put a layer of drywall to the subfloor with a damping compound.
And that goes between the joists?
Between the joists. Then we do another one on top of that. So we're adding 2 layers of fire-rated drywall right to the subfloor with a damping compound. Now, this initially takes a lot of the energy out of that.
I didn't even know there was such a thing as a damping compound.
Yeah, damping compound was developed probably about 20 years ago, and it was developed for the marine industry, so that because their boats are always laminated, and they're all monolithic, and they've all got motors on every end of them. So they were trying to figure out how to get motor noise not to come all the way to the front or the back or whatever. So it worked so well when they finally figured it out that they started using it in residential and commercial applications.
So let me recap here. You're going to take the ceiling down, and then you're going to put 2 layers of drywall between the joists.
This to the joist through this way, drywall to the subfloor like that.
Okay, I'm with you.
So you've got damping, mass, damping, and mass. So those are key ingredients to the first initial reduction of noise, so that the noise is not actually entering that box with the level of volume that it was previously.
Right.
It also helps a lot with the creaking noise that a lot of people complain about, because it actually glues everything together, so it's no longer like moving and creaking.
Right.
So that's the first 2 layers. Then we insulate in that cavity with regular R19 insulation or sound bat insulation.
Now, is that the fiberglass stuff or the board stuff?
Well, no, it's really regular fluffy fiberglass, like cotton candy.
Okay.
Sometimes we use a mineral bat, which is a similar product, just made from a different substance. And that helps to get the reflected energy out of that space.
I'm with you.
So you basically,
it's not bouncing around.
It's like stuffing a blanket inside of a drum.
Right.
So if you do that, when you beat on the top, it's not going to come out the bottom so much.
Right.
The key to this, and the thing to remember in all cases, is that this is a system that is a system in and of itself, and without the complete system, you're going to end up with more noise than you wanted. But let me finish this description.
Yes, sir.
So now we've got the double layers on the subfloor, we've got insulation in place,
right,
and we put isolation clips on the joist. Now those clips are what breaks the structure-borne noise that's coming through the joist.
I see. So again, it's a question of isolating from that transfer of energy. Now, the clip, is that what you screw the drywall to?
The clips house a furring channel. So furring channels are generally what they put drywall on.
Right.
And they're used all the time, only most of them are connected right to the joist.
Right.
So the connection sends that signal through, and if you don't isolate it, then the new drywall becomes a speaker, and you have sending the signal from the floor upstairs through the joist into your new ceiling. So no matter what you do with the subfloor in the previous part of this installation, you end up with signal going through there if you don't isolate that signal.
Wow.
The isolation clips have the furring channel. Then to that furring channel, you put in 2 more layers of 5/8 drywall with damping compound. And
now, do you the seams, are they rotated? I mean, do you make
yeah,
sure
we go one way then the other.
Okay.
Because it's best not to have seams back to back because they may leak.
Right.
And remember, 1% leak is doubling your noise. So you never want to have leaks. So everything at every stage has to be sealed and make sure that there's no leakage. It's like trying to keep water. If you fill the apartment upstairs with water, would it come down to your place? So,
not anymore.
And speaking of which, I also discourage and almost, I really discourage, let's just leave it at that, any kind of recessed lighting, because that's a hole in that ceiling that you don't need if you're abating noise.
Right.
Now, if you want light and you don't mind the noise.
If you want to hear what the neighbors have to say upstairs, let's say you're a private investigator or something, or the CIA or the FBI, but other than that, that's a good point.
No, but we tell people right away, that they need to get rid of the recessed lighting. But I can tell you, I've taken thousands of them out of ceilings, You know.
And you've helped them. Well, look, talking of that, we're going to not necessarily take Mr. Wyatt's word for it, although he seems like a very nice man. Let's listen to one of his customers talk about what he did to their ceiling. We've got the door solution, we've got the ceiling solution, we've got the solution of the isolated wall that you can build in front of a structure like an elevator shaft. Are there any other areas that you work on?
A lot of times a living room and someone's bedroom will be back to back, or two bedrooms back to back. And bedrooms are critical areas, so people like to get their sleep. And when they're woken up from their neighbors, it ain't a pretty story.
Right.
So we
Especially
get a lot of
if
calls.
You've got schedule differences, you've got to be at work at 7, they get off at 3 in the morning. It's an inherent problem.
It is. And what we do with that is we just go right to their existing wall with a layer of mass-loaded vinyl barrier material. Now,
Did you hear that at home? Mass-loaded vinyl barrier material. What is that when it's at home?
Well, typically, this material was developed for noise abatement, and it was developed to replace lead sheeting, which was previously what was used for the vast majority of noise issues, is lead, because it's so dense and so heavy.
Right.
But this 1/8 of an inch of mass-loaded vinyl is the same as a 1/16 of an inch of lead. So it's a pretty good barrier for noise. Now, the added advantage for mass-loaded vinyl is that it's flexible. So it actually moves with noise energy. Even though it's infinitesimally small and you can't really see it with the naked eye, so to speak, it's still taking energy out of that noise.
Now, is this material simply glued to the wall? Or?
No, we don't ever glue it. No, because if you add mass right to mass and make it one mass, the performance of the mass goes down drastically. So we try to keep it what I call quilted. So we nail it in certain places or attach it to the wall in certain places, trying to leave little buckles and bumps and stuff so it actually has some room to be flexible. Now, just to give you an example of how that really works in layman's terms, if you think about bouncing a ball against a wall, it bounces back, comes right back to you, and you catch it and you throw it again. If you throw it against a net, it's going to hit the net and drop to the floor. So that's the same kind of thing. Takes the energy out of the reflected noise.
That's a great analogy. That's such a good analogy that even I understand it, which is pretty good.
So mass-loaded vinyl is a key component in a lot of the applications that I make. And so we start with that by dimpling that to an existing wall. Then we come again with the isolated wall where we put a 1 5/8 inch or a very small stud system next to the wall that goes from the floor to the ceiling and doesn't touch the wall, the existing wall that we're treating.
So this is this isolation principle.
So that's your isolation. Then we put insulation in there to get the reflected noise, to keep that down. Once
so
it
it's
gets
not like that drum, like the
so
ceiling.
you eliminate the drum. And then we put 2 more layers of 5/8 on those studs. So 2 layers of 5/8 with damping compound.
5/8 drywall.
Yeah.
Okay.
And let me just make a side note on the drywall. Regular drywall is very stiff and very resonant, so it has a tendency to vibrate. Now, 5/8 X-rated drywall has fiberglass in the gypsum, which is the core
between the pieces of
between
paper.
the paper is gypsum in regular drywall. In fire-rated drywall, they have fiberglass in there. Now that is more, glass is more dense than gypsum, so you've got more density, and it also keeps it from vibrating as much.
So the secret is this X-rated.
X-rated.
It sounds a little naughty, but actually it's not. I mean, it's just drywall.
It's fire-rated X-type drywall, and generally it's 5/8 of an inch.
It sounds like a Jaguar.
It's something like that.
But that's the way to remember it, people. X-type. So this is kind of the sports car of audio.
It's the Jaguar of noise fixes.
Okay, so I'm just going to recap here for the viewers, because you know so much about this, but we don't know anything. So you've got this vinyl stuff, then the framing that isolates, then the fiberglass insulation, and then 2 layers of 5/8. So what's that? Let's do the math on that. That's 1.5 inches, right?
Yeah, generally the minimum amount of distance that's needed from your existing wall is 2 7/8 inches. So I call it 3.
What is the value, and I'll ask you the viewers, what is the value of a good night's sleep? You see all these mattress commercials on TV all the time saying go spend $3,000 on a mattress so you can sleep well. Well, even with the best mattress, if you've got, you know, the Trinidad and Tobago festival going on next door, you know, not there's anything wrong with that, or for that matter, the Russian, you know, marching band of Russia or something, whatever it is next door, the mattress isn't going to help.
People have to sleep. If they get to sleep deprived, then they got issues. Mm-hmm. And, you know, most apartments in New York, the average square foot price is $1,000 to $1,200 a foot. So if you want to fix your ceiling,
you're only talking about
$50 extra. What are you going to live in $1 million apartment and not sleep in it?
The cameraman's giving me the wrap it up here, Mr. Wyatt. This has been a fantastic show. People, please visit, what is it, citysoundproofing.com?
Citysoundproofing.com.
And give us your phone. Oh, actually, the phone number's right here at the bottom of the screen. So please, call Mason Wyatt. He's going to answer the phone himself, or go to his website. And we've got, how long have we got left? Okay, we've got a minute left. I've got one more question. What about windows?
Well, windows are another really common issue, and there are a variety of options for installing a fabricated window that just goes inside of the window opening that you have now, so you don't have issues with architecture on the outside of your window. Now they can.
So you sort of have a window within a window.
Yeah, it's like putting up storm windows on the inside of your house.
Okay.
So, and they're specially designed for noise abatement, and they really work well.
And that's a lot of that street noise, the taxi cab,
Yeah,
people out in the street screaming and shouting.
Air conditioner on the building over next door.
Right.
A lot of stuff. Because, tall buildings have that, it's like a canyon. And that echo, that hello.
Well, I'm sure a lot of our viewers have experienced this, and tell me if I'm wrong. They go away on vacation for a couple of weeks, okay? They go somewhere, I don't know, Mexico, whatever. They come home, they walk through the door, they go, I had no idea this place was so noisy.
Yeah, well.
Because you get used to it, right?
Well, you do get used to it. And people, quite frankly, they don't expect there to not be street noise.
Right.
Whereas most of them, they don't want to hear their neighbors. And
Right.
that's more aggravating and more of a problem.
Well,
and
look at Judge Judy. I mean, Judge Judy's got stuff every single day of neighbours about to kill each other.
Oh, yeah.
And over time, it drives them crazy. So if you've got a neighbour that's driving you crazy, you owe it to yourself to pick up the phone and call Mr. Mason Wyatt with City Soundproofing, or go to citysoundproofing.com. We've run out of time, buddy. My cameraman's saying that's it. We'll try and edit it down and get this last little piece of the show in there. But this is amazing. New York is a place that probably more than anywhere in the world has a massive noise problem.
Yep, I've been there since '97, and I got a lot of happy customers.
And you can honestly tell us, in all honesty, that you can fix that problem.
I have solutions for most of the problems I've ever encountered. And the challenges of something new excites me.
Yeah. Okay, so this gentleman here, if you pick up the phone and call him, will come to your apartment, check out the job, talk to you about the solutions, and this month only, Manhattan is lucky enough to be offered a $499 special. I think that sounds like a great deal. I know if I lived in Manhattan, I do. In fact, I live in Richmond, Virginia. I might have you do my door anyway. We got noisy neighbors down here, and we live in a house. But thank you for watching FYI TV. Mr. Mason Wyatt, City Soundproofing. We've run out of time. Please call or go to his website. You can. There's a place to email you on the website, right? Okay. Give it a shot. Have him come out and see you. He's going to do it in person. This is the gentleman you'll meet. So please, please, please do something about all that noise.